trying to force you out.
Yes, not only the coach, but the other 2 or 3 guys there around the club.
At the senior executive level.
Yes, that I felt betrayed.
And you think they're trying to get rid of you?
Honestly, I shouldn't say that, I don't know, but listen, I don't care, people should listen the truth. Yes, I feel betrayed, and I felt that some people that don't want me here, not only this year, but last year too.
Welcome to Room 442, and listen, we will get to Canada later in today's show. I'm talking to Stephen Hart about the squad. We'll talk about some concerns about the squad we might have, and also some World Cup omissions. But we must start with this Cristiano Ronaldo. He's done it once again, guys and girls. He's stolen the content from us. He demands we talk about him as per usual. This interview with Piers Morgan coming out later this week. You can find all the various clips across social media right now. Is this, Albert, the final move of a desperate victim, or is it just Ronaldo doing Ronaldo?
Both. I think it's Ronaldo doing Ronaldo. I think really he knows he's becoming irrelevant and he wants to stay relevant, and this is a way to do that, especially right now. Think about the timing of this, right? It comes out the weekend where it's the last fixtures heading into the World Cup. It comes out after a big Manchester United win where they won with a last-minute winner against Fulham. So now he has, from when this interview drops Wednesday and Thursday until the beginning of the World Cup, it's all going to be surrounded around Ronaldo and what's going on with him. So it's all pre-planned. It is kind of like the boy who cries wolf, but it's also him trying to stay relevant.
He says that he's disrespected and he can't respect Erik ten Hag because he can't respect someone that doesn't respect him. Do you buy into that? I think it's pretty clear that Ten Hag didn't actually want him there at the club, fair enough. And maybe he was being pushed out. But at the same time, there are many reports saying that Ronaldo also wanted to move earlier as well. So I'm not sure what happened here, who's wrong and who's in the right here. But I would imagine that at this point, he cannot go back to United having called out the manager like he did.
Yeah, well, there were reports this morning that he's also going to get fined £1 million for the interview because obviously it appears that no one at United knew that this was happening. So they feel, they're taken aback and they feel blindsided. And I understand from their perspective that regardless of whether Ten Hag and Ronaldo weren't getting along, to find out something like this happened over social media must have been awful. Now, whether or not Ten Hag and Ronaldo were getting along, were respecting each other, maybe they weren't. But is this the right move? You claim that you love this club. No, you don't, because you wouldn't do that. It's simple to me. And I think Albert's right. It's all about him. And it's a petty look for him. As I said, maybe he wasn't getting treated properly. Maybe he wanted to leave. But this reaction, it's not gaining you respect from anyone.
Seems he's embarrassed the club. This kind of, what they said by the club finding out like the way they did, like the rest of us. He's actually embarrassing the club. United look bad right now.
They do. And, just from my personal experience of covering Toronto FC, there's an incident that I kind of draw this back to, and it's Josie Altidore and the way that he went out with TFC. Absolute club legend, icon, scored the game-winning goal in the 2017 MLS Cup final, beloved by the fans. Similar to the way Ronaldo is by Manchester United fans, right? And Josie Altidore from time to time used to come out and would call out the club. Maybe they weren't treating Michael Bradley's injury right, or they didn't handle the way that the club, Sebastian Giovinco, the way he left the club. Maybe he didn't like that. And the difference between what Josie Altidore did and what Cristiano Ronaldo is doing is that Josie Altidore was still invested in the club at that point. He wanted the best for Toronto FC, right? Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't want anything to do with Manchester United at this point. He's still under contract with United and is doing this because he wants to force a move out from the club, right? But the thing is, there's still games in December when the World Cup ends. Mm-hmm. It's not like he's out. If this interview came out 2 years from now, I'd understand. I'd view it in a different light. But you're still under contract with this club. You're still a player for a club, by the way, that looks like it's starting to finally turn its ship around.
Remember when Roy Keane did something similar? Had that infamous interview before he left for Celtic, I think it was. And this was a club legend as well. The captain, the leader. He went out on, I think it's actually MUTV, of all places. And it's like, what happened here, right? And then it was untenable. He couldn't go back, essentially, right? It's the same thing here. This guy can't go back. So where does he go? Is he more appealing now because he's available? Or do you think clubs look at this and go, man, the baggage is real? Do we want to get into bed with this at the moment? Right now, Sporting Lisbon is all clubs, the favourites at plus 300, Chelsea at plus 400, then the usual suspects, PSG, Napoli, Man City, Atletico, Newcastle.
No.
What's the end result here?
Well, to answer your first question, baggage, huge. And financially, how are you going to pay this guy, right? And if he needs to leave in January, which probably is going to happen, he's not going to play for Manchester United. Someone has to take on that salary. And whether it's maybe Manchester United paying a portion of it and the other team paying a portion of it, or they just rip up the contract. I don't know financially how that would work. But if I'm any of those clubs you just mentioned, I want to steer clear from this guy as much as possible. But then you have the other side where it's like, well, look what he did last season. He was Manchester United's top scorer, scored more goals than Harry Kane, scored 6 Champions League goals. This guy can still do a job, right? And a team like Chelsea makes sense, even though I don't think United would move to a direct competitor. It just all pointing towards maybe a return to Sporting. I just don't know how financially that would work out.
Is this the time we see Ronaldo go to MLS? Because they could afford it, some clubs.
Yeah.
And honestly, like you said, I don't think half the teams in Europe want him right now. Whether they can afford him or not, whether they're a rival of Man United and, they don't want to sell him to, like a Chelsea if they're competing against one another. But what do you think about that?
I love that you're the one that brought up MLS.
Look at me.
I think that's so
Look
funny.
at this. We're learning.
Well, it's funny because I don't think you would bring up MLS if it was Lionel Messi, but you're bringing up MLS it's Cristiano Ronaldo, and I think that's because it shows the drop off in sort of the player that he is now. I don't think enough people are talking about this. Cristiano Ronaldo has fallen off,
Well,
and
it's because he's not playing, though.
I don't think that's the reason though. Even when he is playing, he doesn't look great, right?
Is he interested? That's the thing. Does he care? That's what I look at his body language, a guy that no longer cares, which is incredible because you could never question his heart before. He wanted to win more than maybe anyone in world football. But I haven't seen that with United. That being said, would you put it past this guy, Ronaldo, to go to the World Cup, have a great World Cup? We've discussed, does he fit into Portugal's plans? Where should he start? It's Ronaldo, right? His arrogance might be enough to put in a great performance at the World Cup, and then that value comes back up again.
But yeah, Mike, what if he does have a great World Cup? I don't think Portugal are going to win it, but even if they have a good run, even if he scores all these goals, starting every game, is that going to change? Because that, to me, might be the only thing that changes the way European managers may look at him. Yeah, this whole drama at United, but okay, we can see that this guy can go and play somewhere else and play amazing.
Yeah, no, I think that's what I was going to get to, is that if you're playing well, you could be as obnoxious as you want to be, right? Scoring goals, winning, heals all of this. You're not doing that. If you go out and do that at the World Cup, you bet you become a lot more attractive to other teams that prioritize winning above all else. So, yeah, I think this will be a massive World Cup for Ronaldo.
Well, there might be a spot, you mentioned MLS, there might be a big gaping hole in one team, Toronto FC. There's a few reports across England today, The Sun, Wizard of Oz, love that by the way, Canada's World Cup star Jonathan Osorio interested in transfer to England in January from Toronto. We've known for a while that Ozo sees maybe his future in Europe somewhere. He's a free agent, but now we're seeing the tabloids report about a Canadian international. It's kind of cool, actually. Even though it's the Sun, which don't get me started on the Sun.
Yeah.
But very quickly, is England going to be the destination? Is it EFL? Does he have aspirations for the Premier League? I'm sure he does, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think nothing's really changed. Jonathan Osorio wants to play Champions League football. Whether or not he'll get that,
CONCACAF Champions League?
yeah, I mean, we'll see. But whether or not he gets that remains to be seen, right? I think that none of this will be determined until after the World Cup. He wants to go out and market himself on the top stage in the world, and we'll see what happens after that. If he doesn't get Champions League football, he's looking for a lot of money. It's his final contract
and as he should.
Yeah,
right?
as he should, as he has the complete right.
Yeah.
Where is he going to play Champions League football? He's not going into the top 5 clubs.
Well, not in
any
England,
league.
perhaps, no.
No.
But you can see, we mentioned off camera, we've seen Club Brugge.
Go to Belgium, yeah.
Like the
Yeah.
Canadians,
It would
right?
have to be one of
type
those,
club,
those fringe teams, right? Like
And I think he'd
Shakhtar.
fit in there. I mean, he's a really, really good player.
Yeah.
But he's now 30, so this is a chance, and
This is
give
a
him credit
chance.
for that. We'll see. It's going to be, forget Ronaldo transcending the World Cup. Ozo could transcend the World Cup for us because we're big fans of Ozo. I want to see him do well. And, hey, a good World Cup for Ozo. is good for Ozo and good for us. All right, more Canada later in today's show, including a chat with Stephen Hart, former Canadian head coach, when we come back. 9 days, it's just 9 days till Canada kicks off its World Cup journey up against Belgium. And of course, we saw the squad being announced on Sunday. No major surprises there, but still many questions to be asked. So a man that can answer all those questions is a former head coach of Canada's men's national team. For 3 years, Stephen Hart was at the helm, and Stephen Hart joins me right now. Stephen, welcome to Room 442.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, let's start with tournament football. It's so different to qualification, to various other parts of the football world. Can you tell us the biggest challenge as a head coach to actual tournament football?
Well, I mean that statement's 100% correct. You go into it. You have to consider it that your first objective is to get out the group. And I always felt there's a couple of things with tournament football that I think was essential. The first thing was to try and get a result in the opening game. That sorts of slows everybody down. And the second thing, I would have preferred to play the better team in the opening game. That had time to assess us completely, see what our form is like during the tournament, etc. Either you play them first or you play them last after they may have qualified, and then try to take a look at some player, give some players a run out. So, I think those are the two most important things when you enter tournament football.
Well, in that case, Canada's got a good draw, right? Because they're playing Belgium first and then Croatia, followed by Morocco. Can you talk about the step up for some of these players? Obviously, we know Alphonso Davies, John Davies, these players, they play Champions League football. They play at the very highest level. But for a lot of these players playing in MLS, the step up from CONCACAF to Belgium and Croatia must be a huge, huge gulf.
Yeah, of course, especially the speed at which the opposition does things. The Uruguay game was a good example. I thought Canada was good in the game, good possession. They were on the front foot. They moved the ball well. And what they would have learned from that game, basically, is that little extra time that you may get in CONCACAF in the penalty area, you wouldn't get it at the top level. And we could have scored in that game if our touch was a little bit more measured, if we could get the release of the shot a little quicker. There were a couple of times in transition they came right through the middle of the midfield very, very quickly and put us under some pressure. But in reality, they only had, I think, 4 shots in the game, Uruguay, but they scored 2. And that's going to be the difference. They don't, the top teams don't need a lot of chances, and your mistakes are going to be punished.
Yeah, I must admit, I was quite surprised to see Canada going out on the front foot against Uruguay, a team, in Canada that are quite comfortable to sit back and counter with that pace out wide. How do you expect them to set up against Belgium in that first game?
I don't think John is going to sit back. The strength of Canada is going forward. The wide positions, we got a lot of pace, we got a lot of depth, and really to be on the front foot is probably the better way to play. If you go against Belgium and you're playing a deep block and you play too deep, they're sort of accustomed to that, and with the passing quality they have, they will cause you some problems. And I think the staff of Canada knows that.
Now, the good news in Canada, of course, is the health of Alphonso Davies and Atiba Hutchinson, who's just got back this past week in a Turkish Cup game, played 70 minutes. So the deep bone bruise in his foot, obviously not ideal, but it's good news. You know Atiba well. What has Canada got in Atiba Hutchinson? And even at, say, 75%, does he need to start against Belgium if possible?
I think so. I think he gives the midfield the kind of balance that it needs. It allows Esakio to put forward a little bit more and support the attack centrally. And he's always going to be organizing and covering in the midfield. I think when you look at the Uruguay game, we missed that a little bit. and he has that intelligence to know when to fill gaps, to recognize when the fullbacks have pushed forward, and more than likely that's where we may lose the ball and just drift over to that side a little bit to provide some cover. I think that's essential.
Absolutely, and you may even see him at centre back, right? I suppose at some point, which isn't ideal, obviously, but it's Atiba. He can play in different positions. Would you say defense is the biggest concern for this team from a depth standpoint?
Everybody is saying that. We did give up the least amount of goals in CONCACAF, but we're talking about a different level here. For me, defending a lot of times has to do with the balance of the team. In the wide positions, our defending is fairly solid, and centrally, if the central defenders have the sort of support of the midfielder in front of them, taking away the channels, etc., and we're not caught on the counter too many times, I think Canada will be okay.
Well, Stephen, it's just around the corner. It's so exciting for all Canadian fans, obviously. Thank you so much for this. I hope you get a chance to sit back and enjoy the World Cup from your couch.
I definitely will.
Thanks so much. That's Stephen Hart, everyone. Time for a break. Much more, though, on the other side. Thanks to Stephen Hart for that fascinating chat there. So we know Canada's squad now. No real surprises, I don't think. We could talk about Liam Fraser, Liam Miller potentially, but what's your major overriding concern about this squad, apart from the fact they've got to play Belgium and Croatia?
From the squad itself, well, the back line, right? I think that's definitely the biggest concern. Besides their starting three center backs, the drop-off, no disrespect to Derek Cornelius, is pretty significant. So unless all three of those guys can play each and every minute throughout the group stage, I think Canada might be in trouble. If you have to slot Atiba Hutchinson in at center back, that's not ideal for this club. Especially, okay, A, Atiba's not a center back, but B, he's not 100% match fit. So you have to throw him into a new position.
So you need him in the midfield.
Yeah, that too, right?
Right.
And it's just so telling that how weak their back line is. If Herdman's talking about Atiba is one of the next man up in that center back depth, right? Which I understand. Listen, he's a really good player, but not being 100% fit, it's really concerning. Considering we've been talking about this whole time, but the attacks that they're going to be going up against, they can get torn apart. They really could.
But Herman's well aware of that, right? And he'll plan his tactical strategy around that. That being said, we know the attack is where the danger is on the counter, right? So at some point they've got to sit and they will absorb pressure. And then just hopefully pounce and score on the break, right? It's really as simple as that, isn't it?
That's why so many teams beat Belgium and Croatia all the time at Euros and World Cups.
Well, those are the teams that frustrate the big teams, right? Teams that sit back and counter, but you just got to be able to handle that pressure for 75, 80 minutes of the match, and hopefully poach a goal and see if you can keep a clean sheet. That's their only way.
It's funny. I don't know if this is gamesmanship or not, but Herman's come out and said that that's not the way that Canada wants to play. Canada want to take it to other teams.
Uruguay.
We saw against Uruguay.
Yeah.
Perfect example.
Really surprised
Canada
us.
did that, right? Where they came out, they tried to boss the ball, dictate possession, attack. I don't know if you can get away with that against a team like Belgium.
They didn't get away with it against Uruguay either.
Well, they created a lot of chances. Like if they were just finish off those chances against Uruguay, they're getting a result in that game. Right?
And for a team with a weak defense, I mean, through qualifying, the defense was pretty good. We shouldn't forget that, right? They found a way. As usual, they surprised us, and they played above themselves. So it's going to be fascinating. We've got a week or so to think about what they might do, and then he always surprises us with something.
Yeah.
Out of left field. So we'll see. All the squads though are now in for the World Cup. We know each team's 26-man squads. There are some omissions, obviously a few through injury, but let's talk about. Who's the glaring omission for you from this World Cup? The one guy maybe that you think you're going to miss, Sarah?
For me, it has to be Sergio Ramos. Obviously, there's a connection watching Spain growing up, but I think Spain's defense has always been their weakest component. And we have a guy who would have gone to his 5th World Cup, is a leader of this team, the captain. He will die for the squad.
Was the captain.
Was the captain. And I think you can argue, an age might be a factor, but you still have players like Jordi Alba, Athby, Gaia, who are older, Sergio Busquets. So that wasn't necessarily much of a factor, it seems. So for me, I think it would have just been nice, even if he wasn't going to play all the time, him on the bench. He brings so much to this squad, and I think he would have helped. And it would have been nice to see him send off also like his international career a certain way. And especially the one thing, he came out today and actually released a statement saying, last year coming to Paris, I had injuries, I wasn't playing well. But this year, I feel so much like myself. I'm playing well, and he is. Paris haven't lost a game when he's playing. And he said, I'm never going to change who I am, what I do, and, you know, I'm always going to cheer for Spain and whatever. So
no room for sentimentality, Sarah.
There
It's
it
a
is.
World Cup, you know, and he might be a distraction as well. I mean, he's got a huge personality. Would he be prepared to sit on the bench? I don't know, but I know what you mean. I mean, that's a great picture, isn't it? It's fantastic.
Him and Laporte would be a great partnership, I think.
Yeah.
Good
Oh,
balance
yeah.
there.
Well, interesting one for sure. Mikey, who you got?
For me, Spain, once again, I think he dropped the ball. A couple of guys, I think Spain dropped the ball. But one in particular that stands out to me is David De Gea. Right? I think when he plays for Manchester United, so in essence, I think he gets a little bit of a bad rep. But this guy's still a world-class goalkeeper. He is still one of the best in the world, in my opinion. And okay, maybe he hasn't been in the squad for Spain in a while. Maybe you don't want to start him. But dang, man, he's one of the best 3 goalkeepers for Spain. And the fact that he's not there, I personally think he should be starting for them. But the fact that he's not there, I think Spain dropped the ball on this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Unai Simon is their man, it seems, which is somewhat surprising to some people. But I mean, he's been inconsistent the last
got
couple of years.
mistakes in him, right?
He has got mistakes in him, yeah. But you're right, he can be a fantastic goalkeeper. Albert?
I'm going with Ivan Toney. I'm a big Callum Wilson guy, but I think Ivan Toney would be perfect for England. I mean, you think about a guy who's 25 for 26 penalties. Even if you just use him for that, you know. And the thing with Callum Wilson, he's so injury prone. You really want to bring a backup to Harry Kane that can drop like that, the drop of a dime. Ivan Toney doesn't have that problem. He's a goal scorer, also a playmaker, which Callum Wilson doesn't really have that ability. Not that they need that, but I think bringing Toney would be great, especially for the penalty shootout.
The one concern about England is goals outside Harry Kane. Where do they come from?
Yeah.
And he's proven this year he has goals in his boots to this past weekend, like you mentioned there. Very quickly, I'm going to mention mine would be Joe Linton, simply because he's redefined himself as a midfielder now for Newcastle. And it just demonstrates again how great Brazil are, that he can't get in there, because there weren't too many arguments about why isn't Joe Linton there. No one was freaking out about it apart from Magpies fans, right? He's a wonderful player, but he can't get in that team. And there's so many great Brazilians sitting at home watching this World Cup on TV. It just demonstrates the depth they have and how a brave man's or woman is gonna bet against Brazil at this World Cup. All right, we're out of time. That's a full show. Thank you, Ronaldo, for testing us as per usual. But the show continues. The World Cup build-up continues tomorrow. We'll see you then. Cheers for watching.